You just confessed on camera, buddy.
The fluorescent lights in conference room A buzzed like angry wasps as I watched my wife destroy me in front of 37 people. 37. I'd counted them twice while Claudia Mason, yes, she kept her maiden name for professional reasons, stood at the head of the mahogany table, her perfectly manicured fingers drumming against the surface like she was playing a funeral march. "Greg," she said, her voice carrying that particular blend of condescension and fake concern that had become her trademark since her promotion to CFO 6 months ago. "I think it's best if you step back from the Morrison project until you can apologize to my team for your outburst yesterday." Relinquirst. That's what she called it when I'd questioned Carter Bell's ridiculous proposal to spend $200,000 on team-building exercises that looked suspiciously like expensive dinners and weekend getaways. Carter sat 3 seats to Claudia's right, his perfectly styled hair catching the light as he nodded solemnly, like a priest witnessing a confession. The room was dead silent except for that goddamn buzzing. 37 faces stared at me, some sympathetic, others carefully neutral, a few openly smirking. Sarah from accounting had her phone out, probably live tweeting this corporate execution. The Morrison project was my baby, the AI-driven customer service platform I'd been developing for 8 months. Now my own wife was pulling me off it like I was some incompetent intern. "Okay," I said. That was it, just okay. Not the groveling apology she expected, not the public humiliation she was clearly hoping for. Just one word that somehow managed to suck all the air out of the room. Claudia's left eye twitched, a tell I'd learned to recognize during our 7 years of marriage. She'd wanted a fight, a scene, something to justify whatever power play this really was. Instead, I gave her nothing. "Meeting adjourned," she said, her voice slightly higher than usual. I stood, collected my laptop and coffee mug, the one that said, "World's okayest CTO," that Vince from IT had given me last Christmas, and walked out. Behind me, I could hear the whispers starting, that particular sound of corporate gossip igniting like dry kindling. My office was on the 14th floor. Corner window, view of Boston Harbor. Had been my office for 3 years, back when Dataflow Solutions was just another startup with big dreams and bigger debts. Now we were pulling in $40 million annually, and apparently that meant I was expendable. I spent exactly 17 minutes clearing out my desk. Personal photos went into a banker's box. Me and Claudia at our wedding, back when she still laughed at my jokes. My parents at their 50th anniversary. The team photo from when we landed our first major client. The bottle of bourbon I kept for late-night coding sessions went in too, along with my backup hard drives and the leather portfolio my father had given me when I graduated from MIT. The resignation letter was already written. I drafted it 3 weeks ago, after the 3rd time Claudia had corrected me in a meeting, and saved it in a folder labeled Emergency Protocols. 2 sentences, professional and clean. Effective immediately, I resigned from my position as Chief Technology Officer of Dataflow Solutions. Thank you for the opportunity to contribute to the company's growth. I left it on her desk and took the elevator down to the parking garage. That evening, Claudia came home to our Beacon Hill loft with a bottle of Chateau Margaux and a smile that didn't reach her eyes. She was still in her power suit, navy blue Armani that cost more than most people's monthly rent, and her heels clicked against the hardwood floors like a metronome keeping time for a dirge. "Rough day at the office, honey?" she asked, setting the wine on the kitchen island with theatrical precision. I was sitting on the couch, laptop open, already 3 beers deep into updating my LinkedIn profile. Could say that. She opened the wine with practiced efficiency. We'd been through this routine before, though usually after she'd closed a particularly brutal deal with a client. The ritual of expensive booze to wash away the taste of whatever ethical corners she'd cut that day. "You know," she said, settling into the leather chair across from me. Never next to me on the couch anymore, I realized. When had that started? "I actually did you a favor today." "How's that?" "The Morrison project is going to fail." She took a sip of wine, watching me over the rim of her glass. "Carter ran the numbers. The market research doesn't support the investment. You would have spent the next year building something nobody wants." Carter. Of course. Carter Bell, 34 years old, Harvard MBA, former venture capitalist who joined the company 2 months ago as COO. Carter, with his perfect teeth and his Tesla Model S, and his habit of calling everyone chief like he was running a 1950s newsroom. Carter's been with us for 8 weeks, I said. I've been working on AI customer service solutions for 5 years. Maybe that's the problem. Claudia's smile was sharp enough to cut glass. Maybe you're too close to it. Maybe you need some perspective. Manslaughter. Perspective. Fresh eyes. Carter brings a different viewpoint. He's not emotionally invested. Emissionally invested. Like caring about your work was a character flaw. Like the 60-hour weeks I'd put in. The weekends spent debugging code while she attended networking events. The midnight breakthroughs that had built the foundation of our entire platform. Like all of that was just emotional noise cluttering up the clean lines of Carter's spreadsheets. You're right, I said, closing my laptop. I was too emotionally invested. She blinked. What? Too emotionally invested in the company, in the work, in thinking my opinion mattered. I stood up, grabbed my beer, and headed for the bedroom. Won't make that mistake again. I left her sitting there with her expensive wine and her perfectly crafted justifications, staring after me like I'd just spoken in a foreign language. That night, lying in bed while she scrolled through emails beside me, I made a decision. Not the hot-blooded, revenge fantasy decision you see in movies, but something colder and more patient. Claudia thought she'd won today. She thought she'd put me in my place, shown everyone who really ran things at Dataflow Solutions. She had no idea what she'd actually done. She'd set me free. The next morning, I woke up at 5:30 out of habit, showered, put on my best suit, the charcoal Tom Ford that Claudia had bought me for our anniversary, and drove to the office. Not because I had to, but because I wanted to watch what happened when 37 people realized that the guy who'd built half their infrastructure had just walked away. I parked across the street at a Starbucks and ordered a large coffee, no sugar. Through the window, I had a perfect view of the Dataflow building's main entrance. At 7:15, I watched Vince Martinez pull up in his beat-up Honda Civic, laptop bag slung over his shoulder. Vince was my lead developer, 28 years old, MIT dropout, who could code circles around most people with computer science PhDs. He'd been with me since the beginning, back when we were working out of a shared office space in Cambridge. At 7:23, my phone buzzed with a text from Vince. Dude, what the hell happened yesterday? Conference room's buzzing like a hornet's nest. I typed back, check your email. At 7:45, Claudia's BMW pulled into the executive parking space. She looked confident, purposeful, ready to start her first day as the undisputed queen of Dataflow Solutions. She had no idea that I'd sent a detailed technical handover document to every developer on my team at 6 a.m., along with a simple note. I'm no longer with the company. Here's everything you need to keep the systems running. Good luck. By 8:30, my phone was ringing. Greg Mason. I answered like I was still employed, professional and calm. Greg, it's Rena. Rena Goldberg, company lawyer, 43 years old, sharp as a razor, and twice as cutting when she needed to be. Tell me you didn't actually resign. I actually resigned. Jesus Christ. I could hear her typing in the background, probably pulling up my personnel file. Do you have any idea what you've just done? Lighten me. The Morrison project has a hard deadline in 6 weeks. The client contract has penalty clauses that could cost us $3 million if we don't deliver. You're the only one who understands the core architecture. Was the only one. Greg, Rena, I'm not an employee anymore. I can't discuss proprietary company information. Therefore was a long pause. Where are you? Having coffee. Stay there. Imprisonment. Shuts up. I ordered another coffee and a blueberry muffin and settled in to watch the show. At 9:15, I saw Rena's silver Lexus screech into the parking lot. She was out of the car and through the front door in under 30 seconds, moving like a woman on a mission. 15 minutes later, my phone buzzed with a text from Jasmine Wright, the HR manager. Holy crap, Greg. Rena just tore Claudia a new one in the conference room. We could hear it through the walls. Jasmine was 32, Stanford MBA, and had been quietly documenting every questionable decision Claudia had made since her promotion. Not out of any particular loyalty to me, but because Jasmine was the kind of person who kept meticulous records of everything, and Claudia's management style had been generating a lot of paperwork lately. At 10:30, the rebellion began. It started small. Marcus Thompson from the development team sent an email to the entire company. Until Greg Mason receives a formal apology for yesterday's unprofessional treatment, I will not be working on any projects currently assigned to Carter Bell. Marcus was a solid programmer, not brilliant but reliable, the kind of guy who showed up every day and did good work without drama. Within an hour, 6 more developers had sent similar emails. By noon, it was 12. By 2 p.m., the entire IT department had effectively gone on strike. I was still at Starbucks, laptop open, fielding calls from headhunters and former colleagues who'd heard through the tech community grapevine that I was available. The Boston startup scene was small enough that news traveled fast, and apparently my departure from Dataflow was already generating interest. At 2:47, Vince called me. "Greg, man, you need to see this. Claudia's losing her mind." "How so?" Assumption. She called an emergency meeting, tried to get everyone back to work, said the strike was unprofessional and childish. You know what happened? Trang. Tell me. Sarah from accounting stood up and started clapping. Slow clap, real sarcastic. Then Jenny from marketing joined in. Then half the room. Claudia just stood there turning red while 30 people gave her the most condescending applause I've ever seen. I almost choked on my coffee. You're kidding. Shameful. I am not. It was beautiful, man, like something out of a movie. She stormed out, and now Carter's trying to do damage control, but nobody's listening to him either. Where is he now? Shall. Locked in his office, probably updating his resume. Word is he's been making calls to his old VC buddies all afternoon. Makeshift. At 4:15, my phone rang again. Claudia. Greg. Her voice was tight, controlled, but I could hear the strain underneath. We need to talk. Denial. Drain. Shall, this is ridiculous. You're acting like a child. I'm acting like someone who doesn't work for Dataflow Solutions anymore. Shall, the team is being unreasonable. They're disrupting business operations over a minor disagreement. Minor disagreement? Is that what we're calling it? You questioned Carter's proposal in front of the entire leadership team. You undermined his authority and created a hostile work environment. I laughed. Actually laughed out loud, which seemed to surprise her because she went quiet for a moment. Claudia, I asked 3 questions about budget allocation and ROI projections. If that creates a hostile work environment, maybe the problem isn't with the questions. Carter has extensive experience in operational efficiency. His recommendations are based on industry best practices. Carter's recommendations are based on wanting to throw expensive parties and call them business expenses. That's not the team-building retreat in Martha's Vineyard, the strategic planning session at that resort in Vermont, the client development dinner at Menton that somehow didn't include any actual clients. Should I go on? Silence. How do you know about... I know about a lot of things, Claudia. I just never said anything, because I thought you were smarter than this. She hung up. At 5:30, I finally left Starbucks and drove home. The loft felt different somehow, like I was seeing it clearly for the first time in months. The expensive furniture, the art that Claudia had chosen without consulting me, the wine collection that had grown from a few nice bottles to a full climate-controlled cabinet. Everything was perfectly curated, professionally decorated, and completely soulless. I opened a beer, not one of the craft IPAs that Claudia preferred, but a plain Budweiser from the back of the fridge, and sat on the couch with my laptop. My email was full of messages from Dataflow employees, most of them supportive, some asking what they should do next, a few sharing information that I found very interesting, like the expense reports that Jasmine had forwarded me, showing Carter's business meals that seemed to happen every Tuesday and Thursday evening. Always for 2 people, always at expensive restaurants, always charged to the company, like the calendar screenshots that showed Claudia's schedule mysteriously clearing every Tuesday and Thursday afternoon, like the parking garage security footage timestamp that Vince had managed to pull, showing Carter's Tesla in Claudia's designated spot overnight on multiple occasions. I closed the laptop and finished my beer, thinking about patterns and evidence, and the difference between suspicion and proof. Outside, Boston was settling into its evening rhythm, traffic flowing through the streets like blood through arteries. Everyone heading home to their families, and their problems, and their perfectly normal lives. My phone buzzed with one more text, this one from a number I didn't recognize. Saw the news about data flow. Interested in discussing opportunities. Michael Chen, TechFlow Ventures. TechFlow Ventures. Dataflow's biggest competitor, the company that had been trying to poach our top talent for 2 years. The company that would pay very well for someone with intimate knowledge of our client base, our technology stack, and our internal weaknesses. I deleted the text without responding. For now. Wednesday morning, I didn't go to Starbucks. Instead, I drove to Murphy's Pub, a dive bar 3 blocks from the Dataflow office that served as the unofficial company watering hole. At 7 a.m., it was empty except for Eddie the bartender, a 60-year-old former longshoreman who'd been serving drinks to tech workers since the dot-com boom. "Little early for you, isn't it, Greg?" Eddie asked, not looking up from the glasses he was polishing. "Little late, actually. Coffee?" "Sure thing." He poured me a cup from the pot he kept going for the morning shift workers from the nearby construction sites. "Heard you and Dataflow parted ways." Discharged. "News travels fast. Half your development team shows up here yesterday afternoon, all talking about the same thing." Eddie set the coffee in front of me. "They seemed pretty upset about something." "What'd they say?" "That your wife threw you under the bus in front of the whole company. That the new guy, Carter something, is an A. That nobody knows what's going to happen to their projects." Eddie leaned against the bar. "They also said you took it like a gentleman. Didn't make a scene, didn't fight back, just walked away. Sometimes walking away is the smartest thing you can do." "Sometimes it is. Sometimes it is. Sometimes it is." "Well, me and these companies' life is best things like this. Sometimes it is. Sometimes it is. Sometimes it isn't." At 8:15, Vince walked through the door, laptop bag over his shoulder, looking like he hadn't slept much. "Figured I'd find you here," he said, sliding onto the stool next to me. "Coffee, Eddie. Make it strong." "Rough night?" "Spent 6 hours trying to debug the Morrison platform without your documentation. Turns out your detailed handover was missing a few key pieces." Silenced. Was it smiled? "Was it?" "The authentication protocols, the database optimization scripts, the entire damn API integration layer." Vince accepted his coffee gratefully. "Very thorough, except for the parts that actually make the system work. Must have been an oversight." "Must have been." He took a long sip. "Claudia's freaking out. Called 3 meetings yesterday, each one more panicked than the last. Carter keeps talking about bringing in outside consultants, but nobody knows the code base like you do. That's unfortunate. Allergies." Vince turned to face me. "What's your endgame here? Because right now it looks like you're burning down the company just to prove a point." "Am I?" "The Morrison deadline is in 5 weeks. If we miss it, Dataflow takes a massive financial hit. Stock price tanks, layoffs follow, and a lot of good people lose their jobs." He was right, of course. The Morrison project was worth $12 million to Dataflow, with penalty clauses that would cost us another $3 million if we failed to deliver on time. It was the kind of contract that could make or break a company our size. "What would you do, Vince, if you were in my position?" "I don't know, man. But I know what I wouldn't do. I wouldn't let 30 innocent people suffer because my wife's a witch." At 8:45, Jasmine Wright walked in, looking around nervously before spotting us at the bar. "This is becoming a regular thing, isn't it?" she said, ordering a coffee to go. "The Dataflow Breakfast Club." "You have something for me, Jasmine?" She glanced around, then pulled out her phone. "Carter's expense reports for the last 2 months. Everything charged to client development or team building. Take a look at the dates and times." I scrolled through the screenshots she'd sent me. Dinner at Mistral on March 15th, 8 p.m., party of 2. Lunch at Sorolina on March 17th, 1 p.m., party of 2. Weekend retreat at the Chatham Bars Inn on March 22nd to 24th. 2 rooms booked, but only 1 used. "Interesting pattern," I said. "Gets more interesting when you cross-reference it with Claudia's calendar." Jasmine showed me another set of screenshots. Notice anything? Claudia's schedule showed external meetings at exactly the same times as Carter's expensive meals. Her calendar was blocked for the same weekend as the Chatham retreat, marked as strategic planning, off-site. How long has this been going on? Millions, best I can tell? Since about 2 weeks after Carter started, right around the time Claudia began questioning your project decisions. Vince whistled low. Holy crap, she's been playing you for months. Language, Eddie called from behind the bar. Sorry, Eddie. Holy excrement. She's been playing you for months. I studied the evidence, looking for patterns, inconsistencies, anything that might indicate this was coincidental rather than systematic. But the data was clear. My wife and Carter Bell had been conducting an affair on company time, using company money, while systematically undermining my position at Dataflow. There's more, Jasmine said quietly. I pulled the security logs from the parking garage. Carter's car has been in Claudia's spot overnight 17 times in the last 6 weeks. Always Tuesday and Thursday nights. Tuesday and Thursday, the nights Claudia claimed she was working late on quarterly reports. The nights she came home after midnight, smelling like expensive wine and making excuses about client dinners and board meetings. Jasmine, I said carefully, why are you showing me this? Because Claudia's been systematically destroying the company culture since her promotion. She's created a hostile work environment, she's playing favorites, and she's making decisions based on personal relationships rather than business merit. Jasmine's voice was steady, professional, but I could hear the anger underneath. I've been documenting everything, waiting for the right moment to present it to the board. And now? Now I'm wondering if maybe the board isn't the right audience for this information. At 9:30, I left Murphy's and drove to the Dataflow building. Not to go inside, but to sit in the parking garage and think. My assigned spot was on the 3rd level, next to Claudia's reserve space. Carter's Tesla was there, gleaming black paint reflecting the fluorescent lights. I took out my phone and called a number I'd memorized but never used. Kellerman Investigations, this is Dave. Dave, this is Greg Mason. We met at the tech conference last year. You gave me your card. Salmon, Greg, sure. How can I help you? I need surveillance on 2 people. Professional, discreet, legally admissible evidence. What kind of situation are we talking about? Infidelity, corporate misconduct, possibly fraud depending on what you find. My rate is $500 a day plus expenses. Minimum 1-week engagement. Done. Can you start today? Send me the details. Names, addresses, vehicle descriptions, work schedules. I'll have preliminary results within 48 hours. I hung up and drove home, feeling something I hadn't experienced in months. Control. For the first time since Claudia's promotion, I wasn't reacting to her moves. I was making my own. The loft was empty, of course. Claudia was at the office, probably in crisis management mode, trying to figure out how to deliver the Morrison project without the person who designed it. I went to her home office, a converted bedroom with a glass desk and ergonomic chair that cost more than most people's cars. Her laptop was password protected, but I knew her patterns. She used the same 4 passwords for everything, rotating them every 6 months according to company policy. The 3rd one worked. Dataflow 2024. Her email was a goldmine. Not just the obvious stuff, dinner reservations, hotel bookings, intimate messages with Carter, but the business emails that showed the real scope of their collaboration. Plans to restructure the development team. Discussions about eliminating redundant positions. A draft memo proposing to outsource the entire IT department to a consulting firm that Carter had connections with. They hadn't just been having an affair. They'd been planning a corporate coup, with me as the primary target. I copied everything to an encrypted drive, then went through her browser history. More evidence. Searches for divorce lawyers, articles about asset protection during corporate restructuring, and a particularly interesting query about constructive dismissal and wrongful termination law. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Package delivered to your office. Enjoy the show. D. 9-4, Dave worked fast. I grabbed my keys and headed back to Dataflow, curious to see what he'd found in less than 4 hours of surveillance. The package was waiting at the front desk, addressed to me with no return address. Inside was a manila envelope containing 8 by 10 photographs, time-stamped and dated. Carter and Claudia entering the Mandarin Oriental Hotel at 2:30 p.m. yesterday. The same 2 people leaving 3 hours later. Claudia's hair slightly mussed, Carter's tie loosened. A receipt from the hotel restaurant showing lunch for 2, charged to Carter's personal credit card. The final photo showed them in the hotel bar, sitting close together, Claudia's hand on Carter's thigh while he whispered something in her ear. Both of them were smiling, relaxed, completely unaware they were being watched. I put the photos back in the envelope and walked to the elevator. Time to go upstairs and see how my wife's day was going. The 14th floor of Dataflow Solutions felt like a morgue. Half the cubicles were empty, their occupants either in meetings or participating in the ongoing work slowdown that had crippled productivity for 2 days. The few people I saw kept their heads down, avoiding eye contact like I was carrying some kind of contagious disease. Claudia's office door was closed, but I could hear voices inside, hers and Carter's, speaking in the urgent, hushed tones of people trying to solve an impossible problem. I knocked once and walked in without waiting for permission. "Greg." Claudia looked up from her laptop, her face cycling through surprise, annoyance, and something that might have been fear. "What are you doing here?" "Thought I'd check in, see how the Morrison project is progressing." Jang Carter was sitting in the chair across from Claudia's desk, his jacket off, sleeves rolled up like he'd been working hard. His perfect hair was slightly disheveled, and there were stress lines around his eyes that hadn't been there a week ago. "The Morrison project is under control," he said, standing up with the kind of aggressive confidence that fooled exactly nobody. "We've brought in some external consultants to review the code base." External consultants. I sat down in the chair next to Carter, uninvited. "That must be expensive." "It's a necessary investment," Claudia said, "given the circumstances." "The circumstances being that you fired the person who designed the system." "Until you resigned," Carter said. "Nobody fired you." "Right. I resigned after being publicly humiliated for questioning your budget proposals." I pulled out my phone and opened the photos David sent me. "Speaking of budget proposals, how was lunch at the Mandarin Oriental yesterday?" The temperature in the room dropped about 20 degrees. Claudia's face went pale, while Carter's went red. "I don't know what you're implying," Carter started. "I'm not implying anything. I'm stating facts." I held up my phone so they could see the photo of them entering the hotel. Tuesday, March 26th, 2:30 p.m., the Mandarin Oriental. 2 people, 3 hours, 1 room. Claudia stood up slowly, her hands flat on the desk. "Greg, I think you've been screwing Carter Bell for 2 months while planning to destroy my career and steal my life's work." I kept my voice conversational, matter of fact. "I think you've been using company resources to fund your affair while systematically undermining my authority. I think you're both idiots for leaving such an obvious paper trail." Carter took a step toward me, his fists clenched. "You son of a witch!" "Sit down, Carter." I didn't move, didn't raise my voice, but something in my tone made him freeze. "You really don't want to threaten me right now." "Is that a threat?" Claudia asked. "It's a statement of fact. Carter is a coward who hides behind other people's authority. He's not going to do anything physical because he's not brave enough to face the consequences." Carter's face was now bright red, but he sat back down. Point proven. "What do you want, Greg?" Claudia asked. "I want you to understand what's going to happen next." I put my phone away and leaned back in my chair. "In about 30 minutes, I'm going to walk down to the 15th floor and have a conversation with the board of directors. I'm going to show them evidence of your affair, your expense account fraud, and your plans to outsource our entire development team to Carter's consulting buddies. You can't prove, I can restrain, I can prove all of it. Expense reports, hotel receipts, email records, security footage, and about 50 photographs of you two playing grabba in various expensive restaurants." I smiled. "Jasmine's been very helpful." Claudia sank back into her chair. "Jasmine? Turns out your management style has made you some enemies. People who've been documenting your behavior, waiting for the right moment to act." I stood up. "Congratulations, Claudia. This is that moment." "Wait." Carter found his voice. What if we could work something out? Some kind of arrangement. What did you have in mind? You come back as CTO, full authority over the development team. Claudia and I, we end our personal relationship. Everything goes back to the way it was. I looked at him for a long moment, then started laughing. Not the polite chuckle you give to a bad joke, but genuine, belly-deep laughter that went on for almost 30 seconds. Carter, I said finally, you just offered to stop screwing my wife in exchange for me saving your career. Do you understand how insane that sounds? I'm trying to find a solution that works for everyone. Here's a solution that works for me. You're both fired, your reputations are destroyed, and I get to watch Dataflow's stock price tank when the Morrison project fails and takes your careers with it. Claudia stood up again, this time with some of her old authority returning. You'll destroy the company. 37 people will lose their jobs. 37 people already chose sides when they went on strike to support me. They'll land on their feet. Most of them are good enough to work anywhere they want. The Morrison project? What about it? $12 million, Greg, plus penalties. That's enough to bankrupt Dataflow. I walked to the window and looked out at Boston Harbor, watching the ferries carry their loads of tourists and commuters back and forth across the gray water. The city looked peaceful from up here, orderly, like everything made sense if you just got far enough away from it. You know what's funny, Claudia? You could have just asked me to step down. Could have offered me a consulting contract, or a different position, or even a generous severance package. Could have treated me with basic human dignity, instead of humiliating me in front of the entire company. Would you have accepted? I turned back to face them. We'll never know, will we? My phone buzzed with a text from Vince. Board meeting moved up to 3 p.m. Rena's calling an emergency session. Thought you should know. Looks like I won't have to wait 30 minutes after all, I said. The board's meeting at 3. I assume you'll both be there? Carter looked like he was about to throw up. Greg, please. I know we screwed up, but what? But you're sorry? But it didn't mean anything? But you'll do better next time? I headed for the door. Save it for the board, Carter. Maybe they'll be more sympathetic. I left them sitting there. Two people who thought they were so much smarter than everyone else, now realizing they'd been outplayed by someone they'd written off as irrelevant. The elevator ride to the 15th floor took exactly 43 seconds, long enough for me to think about what I was about to do, and whether I really wanted to pull the trigger on something that couldn't be undone. By the time the doors opened, I'd made my decision. The boardroom was already full when I arrived. 7 directors, plus Rena Goldberg, all looking grim and professional in the way that meant someone was about to get very bad news. Claudia and Carter weren't there yet, probably still upstairs trying to figure out damage control strategies. Greg, said Patricia Williams, the board chair and Dataflow's largest outside investor, thank you for joining us on short notice. Thank you for seeing me, Patricia. Rena tells us you have some concerns about recent management decisions. I set my laptop on the conference table and opened it. I have evidence of systematic misconduct by 2 senior executives, financial impropriety, misuse of authority, and violation of company ethics policies. For the next 20 minutes, I walked them through everything. The expense reports, the hotel receipts, the security footage, the emails planning to restructure the company for personal gain. I showed them Dave's photographs, played audio recordings of Carter's conversations about outsourcing deals, and presented a timeline that made it clear this wasn't a recent affair, but a calculated long-term strategy. When I finished, the room was silent, except for the hum of the air conditioning system. Jesus Christ, said Robert Martinez, the former Dataflow CEO who'd stepped down to become board chair emeritus. How long has this been going on? Best estimate? Since 2 weeks after Carter was hired. Possibly longer if they knew each other before he joined the company. And the Morrison project? Will fail without proper leadership. The external consultants they hired don't understand the architecture. They're trying to reverse engineer 5 years of development work in 5 weeks. Patricia looked around the table at her fellow directors. Recommendations? Fire them both, said Jennifer Walsh, the former Microsoft executive who handled our technology oversight. Immediately. Tonight. Security escort, no access to company systems, full investigation of their financial activities. Agreed, said Robert. But that leaves us with the Morrison problem. Greg, would you consider returning as CTO on an interim basis? Just long enough to deliver the project and stabilize the development team. I closed my laptop and looked around the table at 7 people who were offering me everything I'd wanted 3 days ago. My job back, my authority restored, my wife and her lover destroyed, and the satisfaction of being proven right. No, I said. No? I appreciate the offer, but I'm done with data flow solutions. You'll have my full cooperation in transitioning the Morrison project to whoever you hire as my replacement. But I won't be coming back. I stood up and headed for the door, leaving 7 very wealthy people staring after me in confusion. Greg? Patricia called out. What are you going to do? I paused in the doorway and smiled. I'm going to start over, somewhere that deserves what I have to offer. The elevator doors were closing when I heard shouting from the boardroom. Claudia and Carter had finally arrived for their appointment with Destiny. I drove home through the late afternoon traffic, listening to the radio and thinking about new beginnings. By the time I pulled into the parking garage under our building, I'd made another decision. I was moving out tonight. The loft felt different when I walked in, like I was seeing it through someone else's eyes. 7 years of marriage reduced to a collection of objects that would need to be divided, appraised, and distributed according to whatever prenuptial agreement our lawyers could dig up. I'd signed something before the wedding, but honestly couldn't remember the details. Claudia had handled all of that, back when I trusted her to handle things. I was packing my books when she came home. Greg. Her voice was flat, exhausted. We need to talk. She was still in her work clothes, but they looked rumpled now, like she'd been wearing them for days instead of hours. Her perfect hair was mussed, her makeup smeared slightly around the eyes. For the first time in months, she looked human. The board fired us both, effective immediately. I continued packing books. I heard. Carter's already left town, flew back to New York tonight, won't return my calls. Silenced. Greg, please. Greg, please. Look at me. I turned around. She was standing in the doorway, holding a bottle of wine. Not the expensive stuff this time, just a regular bottle of Cabernet from the grocery store. I know what you think of me right now, she said. I know how this looks. Does it look, Claudia, like I'm a cheating witch who destroyed our marriage and our careers for some meaningless fling with a pretty boy consultant? That's pretty accurate. Wine without ceremony, poured 2 glasses, and set one on the coffee table in front of me. It wasn't meaningless. Oh, well, that makes it better. I'm not trying to make it better. I'm trying to explain. I sat down on the couch, curious despite myself. Explain away. Took a large sip of wine, then another. Do you remember when we started Dataflow? Back in the beginning, when it was just you and me and Vince working 18-hour days in that crappy office in Cambridge? I remember. You were brilliant. Are brilliant. You could see solutions to problems that nobody else even knew existed. You built something amazing, and I was so proud to be part of it. But somewhere along the way, I stopped being part of it. I became the money person, the business development person, the one who handled the boring stuff while you did the real work. She set her wine glass down with slightly too much force. Do you know what it's like to be married to someone who's genuinely gifted at something you'll never understand? I thought you were proud of what I built. I was. I am. But I also resented it. Every day, watching you create things that mattered while I shuffled spreadsheets and negotiated contracts. Watching everyone defer to your technical expertise while treating me like a glorified accountant. So you decided to destroy it. I decided to matter. When I got promoted to CFO, it was the first time in years that people looked at me as something other than Greg Mason's wife. I had authority, respect, power. And when Carter showed up, he told you what you wanted to hear. He told me I was brilliant, that my business insights were just as valuable as your technical skills, that I deserved to run the company, not just manage its finances. I finished my wine and poured another glass. And all you had to do was get rid of me. It wasn't supposed to happen like this, Greg. The plan was to ease you into a consulting role, let you focus on development while Carter and I handled operations. You would have been happier, and the company would have been more efficient. By outsourcing our entire development team, by reducing overhead and increasing profitability. It's basic business strategy. It's basic stupidity. You can't outsource innovation, Claudia. You can't consultant your way to breakthrough technology. All you can do is create a more efficient way to build mediocre products. She was quiet for a long moment, staring into her wine glass like it might contain answers. I know that now, she said finally. The external consultants Carter hired? They've been working for 3 days and haven't made any meaningful progress on the Morrison project. They don't understand the architecture, don't grasp the integration challenges, don't have any idea how to optimize the performance algorithms, and is threatening to pull out. $12 million, gone, plus penalties that could bankrupt what's left of data flow. I leaned back into the couch cushions, feeling something that wasn't quite satisfaction, but wasn't sympathy either. What do you want me to do about it? Help them, please. Not for me, not for Carter, but for the 37 people who are going to lose their jobs when data flow goes under. The same 37 people who went on strike to support me. Yes, the same people you were planning to fire anyway when you outsourced the development team. She flinched. Yes, I stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the city lights beginning to twinkle in the gathering dusk. Boston at night was beautiful. All those lives and dreams and ambitions glowing in the darkness. Everyone fighting their own battles and nursing their own wounds. I'll make you a deal, Claudia. Deal. I'll consult on the Morrison project. Enough to get it delivered on time, keep data flow solvent, save those jobs. And in return, you sign divorce papers. Tonight. No contest, no negotiations, no fighting over assets. Clean break. We both walk away and start over. Greg, that's the deal. Take it or leave it. She was quiet for almost 5 minutes, long enough that I started to think she'd fallen asleep. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper. There's something else you need to know. What? Carter didn't just target data flow randomly. He was hired by TechFlow Ventures specifically to destabilize our operations and steal our client base. I turned around to face her. What are you talking about? Michael Chen, TechFlow's CEO. He and Carter have been planning this for months. The affair, the corporate restructuring, the outsourcing deals. It was all designed to weaken data flow enough that TechFlow could acquire us at a bargain price. You're saying Carter was a corporate spy? I'm saying Carter was a corporate saboteur, and I was too stupid and flattered to see it until it was too late. The room felt like it was spinning slightly. How do you know this? He told me. Tonight, after the board meeting. He was bragging about it, laughing about how easy it had been to manipulate me. Her voice cracked slightly. He said I was pathetic, a desperate housewife who'd been so hungry for attention that I'd destroyed my own marriage for a few months of mediocre sex with someone who never gave a damn about me. I sat back down, trying to process this information. Jesus, Claudia. I know how this sounds. The cheating wife suddenly claiming she was manipulated, trying to shift blame to someone else. But I have proof. She pulled out her phone and played an audio recording. Carter's voice, slightly drunk, talking to someone on the phone. Phase 1 is complete. Dataflow's CTO is out, their development team is in chaos, and their CFO is completely under my control. Chen wants to know if we can accelerate the timeline for the acquisition offer. The recording went on for another 3 minutes, detailing TechFlow's plan to acquire Dataflow's technology and client base while eliminating its key personnel. My name came up several times, always in the context of neutralizing the technical threat and ensuring Mason can't interfere with the transition. When was this recorded? 2 hours ago. I started recording our conversations after you showed me those photographs. I wanted to have evidence in case things got worse. There's no way he can do there. Things got much worse. She finished her wine and set the glass down. Greg, I know I don't deserve your help. I know I've destroyed everything we built together, and I know you have every right to walk away and let Dataflow burn. But Carter and Chen are going to do this to other companies, other families. They're hunters. I looked at her, really looked at her, for the first time in months. The woman I'd married 7 years ago was still there, underneath the corporate armor and the defensive anger. Scared, ashamed, but finally telling the truth. You want revenge, I said. I want justice. There's a difference. Is there? Revenge is personal. Justice is about making sure this doesn't happen to anyone else. I finished my wine and stood up. I need to make some phone calls. Does that mean? It means I'm going to help you destroy Carter Bell and Michael Chen. Not because I forgive you, and not because I want to save our marriage, but because some things are more important than personal grievances. She nodded, tears starting to flow down her cheeks. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. What I have in mind is going to get ugly, and you're going to be right in the middle of it. What do you need me to do? I smiled, and for the first time in days it felt genuine. I need you to call Carter. Tell him you want to meet tomorrow night. Tell him you have information about Dataflow's client database that TechFlow would find very valuable. He won't believe me, not after what happened today, because he thinks you're desperate and stupid. He thinks he's won, and winners get careless. Then we're going to give Carter Bell and Michael Chen a masterclass in why you should never underestimate the people you've wronged. I pulled out my phone and dialed Dave Kellerman's number. Dave, it's Greg Mason. I need to expand our surveillance operation, and I'm going to need some very specific equipment. Hotel's rooftop bar was perfect for what I had in mind. Public enough that Carter would feel safe, private enough for intimate conversation, and equipped with the kind of ambient lighting that would make hidden cameras nearly invisible. Dave had spent the morning installing micro-surveillance equipment, while I worked with Vince and Jasmine to prepare the technical components of our trap. Claudia sat across from me at a corner table, wearing a black dress that was conservative enough for business, but attractive enough to keep Carter's attention focused on her instead of his surroundings. She looked nervous, which was perfect. Carter would expect her to be nervous. Remember, I said, checking my watch. Let him do most of the talking. He's arrogant enough to explain his entire plan if you just ask the right questions. And if he doesn't take the bait, he will. Men like Carter can't resist showing off how clever they are, especially to women they think they've outsmarted. My earpiece crackled with Dave's voice. Target approaching from the elevator. Black suit. Looks like he's trying to impress someone. Carter Bell walked into the bar like he owned the place, scanning the room until he spotted Claudia. He'd cleaned up since this morning. Fresh haircut, expensive suit, the kind of confident swagger that came from thinking you'd already won the game. Claudia. He leaned down to kiss her cheek, but she pulled back slightly. Good. Let him work for it. Carter, thank you for meeting me. Of course, though I have to admit, I was surprised by your call. He signaled the waitress and ordered a scotch, top shelf. After this morning's unpleasantness, I thought we might not be speaking. This morning was difficult, but I've had time to think. And I realized that Greg's little revenge fantasy doesn't have to destroy both of our careers. Carter smiled, the carnivory grin of a shark, sensing blood in the water. I'm listening. From my position at the bar 20 feet away, I could hear every word through the directional microphone Dave had planted in the flower arrangement on their table. My laptop was open, showing feeds from 3 different camera angles, all recording in high definition. Dataflow is finished, Claudia continued. The board is talking about liquidation, selling off assets to pay creditors. But the client database alone is worth millions to the right buyer. The right buyer being someone who understands the market, someone with the resources to properly monetize those relationships. Carter leaned forward, interested. What exactly are you proposing? I still have access to the company's servers. I can download the complete client database, including contact information, contract histories, and technical specifications for every project we've delivered in the last 5 years. But B, valuable information. Worth how much? Carter pretended to consider this, but I could see the excitement in his eyes. To the right buyer? Probably 2 million. Maybe 3, depending on the completeness of the data. And you know the right buyer? I might have some contacts who would be interested. In my earpiece, Dave's voice was calm and professional. Got it. Clear admission of intent to purchase stolen corporate data. That's industrial espionage. Minimum 5 years federal time. Claudia took a sip of her wine, playing the part of the desperate woman perfectly. There's one problem. The data is encrypted, and Greg changed all the access codes before he left. So I need someone with technical expertise to help me crack the encryption. Someone who understands database architecture. Carter's smile widened. I think I can help with that. My contact at TechFlow has some very talented people on his team. TechFlow Ventures? You know them? I know they're Dataflow's biggest competitor. I know they've been trying to steal our clients for years. Steal is such an ugly word. They prefer to think of it as aggressive business development. Voice in my ear. Beautiful. He's about to incriminate his entire organization. How does this work? Claudia asked. Hypothetically. You provide the database access. My contact provides the technical expertise and the buyer. We split the proceeds 3 ways. 3 ways? You, me, and my contact. $2 million, split evenly. Not bad for a night's work. And your contact is? Looked around the bar, checking for eavesdroppers. He was being careful, but not careful enough. Michael Chen, CEO of TechFlow. He's been planning something like this for months. Blamed what exactly? A complete acquisition of Dataflow's assets and client base. The corporate sabotage, the management shakeup, your husband's departure. It was all designed to weaken the company enough that TechFlow could buy it for pennies on the dollar. Claudia's face showed just the right amount of shock. You planned Greg's firing? I planned everything, sweetheart. The affair was just a bonus. Carter finished his scotch and signaled for another. Chen identified Dataflow as a target 6 months ago. They hired me to infiltrate the company, destabilize operations, and eliminate key personnel. Your husband was always the primary target. He's too smart and too talented to leave in play. So you seduced me to get to him. I seduced you because you were lonely and neglected and desperate for someone to tell you how brilliant you were. Getting to Greg was just good business. In my earpiece, Dave whistled softly. This guy's a real piece of work. Tyler leaned back in his chair, completely relaxed now, enjoying his moment of triumph. The beautiful part is that it worked perfectly. Dataflow is finished, Greg's reputation is destroyed, and TechFlow gets everything they wanted, at a fraction of what it would have cost to compete legitimately. What about the Morrison project? What about it? TechFlow will acquire the client contract as part of the bankruptcy proceedings. Chen's team will deliver a working system, probably not as elegant as what your husband would have built, but functional enough to satisfy the client. And the Dataflow employees? The useful ones will be offered positions with TechFlow. The rest, Carter shrugged, the rest will find other jobs. That's how business works, Claudia. Darwin in action. Claudia was quiet for a moment, staring into her wine glass. When she looked up, her expression was cold enough to freeze blood. There's just one problem with your plan, Carter. What's that? You underestimated my husband. Carter's smile faltered slightly. What do you mean? Instead of answering, Claudia raised her hand and waved. I stood up from my position at the bar and walked over to their table, pulling out the chair next to Carter and sitting down. Hello, Carter. Enjoying your scotch? Face went through several interesting color changes. Pale white, then red, then a sort of greenish hue that suggested nausea. What the hell? Relinquish. I'm not here to make a scene. I'm here to make you an offer. An offer? I pulled out my phone and showed him the screen, which displayed a live feed from one of Dave's cameras. Smile, Carter. You're on television. You recorded our conversation, your admission of corporate sabotage, your confession to industrial espionage, your plan to steal Dataflow's client database, and your very detailed explanation of Michael Chen's role in this conspiracy. Trung stood up abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. This is entrapment. It's illegal. Actually, it's not. Massachusetts is a one-party consent state for recording conversations. Claudia consented. You didn't need to. You can't use this. I can and I will. In fact, I already have. I showed him another screen on my phone, this one displaying an email inbox. 15 minutes ago, I sent copies of tonight's recording to the FBI's white-collar crime division, the Massachusetts Attorney General's office, and the business reporters at the Boston Globe and Wall Street Journal. Carter sat back down heavily, the fight going out of him like air from a punctured balloon. I also sent copies to TechFlow's board of directors, along with a detailed report of Michael Chen's activities. I'm guessing Chen's going to have some interesting conversations with his investors tomorrow morning. What do you want? Carter asked quietly. I want you to call Chen, right now. Tell him the plan has changed. Changed how? Tell him that data flow is no longer for sale. Tell him that we've recovered from our temporary management crisis and are stronger than ever. Tell him that if TechFlow wants to compete with us, they'll have to do it legitimately. He won't believe me. He will when he sees tomorrow's news coverage. TechFlow CEO implicated in corporate sabotage scheme. FBI investigates technology industry espionage ring. Startup wars turn criminal. I smiled. Chen's going to be too busy with his own problems to worry about acquiring data flow. Carter pulled out his phone with shaking hands. The call lasted 3 minutes, most of it Chen screaming loud enough that I could hear him from across the table. When Carter hung up, he looked like he'd aged 5 years. Congratulations, I said. You've just experienced what it feels like to be thrown under the bus by someone you trusted. What happens now? Now you're going to disappear. Leave Boston, change careers, maybe try your hand at something that doesn't involve destroying other people's lives. Because if I ever see you again, if you ever contact my wife again, if you ever even think about interfering with Dataflow or its employees, I will make tonight look like a friendly conversation. Carter stood up on unsteady legs. And if I don't disappear, then you'll spend the next 5 to 10 years in federal prison, assuming you survive the civil lawsuits from Dataflow's investors and employees. I stood up as well, straightening my jacket. Your choice, Carter, but choose quickly. The FBI will probably want to talk to you sometime tomorrow, and it would be unfortunate if they couldn't find you. He walked away without another word, weaving slightly as he headed for the elevator. I watched him go, feeling something that wasn't quite satisfaction, but was definitely closure. Is it over? Claudia asked. For him, yes. For us? I sat back down and poured myself a glass of wine from the bottle she'd ordered. That depends. On what? On whether you meant what you said about wanting justice instead of revenge. I meant you did. Good, because tomorrow morning, you're going to walk into Dataflow's offices and meet with the board of directors. You're going to present them with a complete report of Carter's sabotage operation, including all the evidence we gathered tonight. You're going to recommend a complete security audit of all company systems, and you're going to volunteer to testify in any legal proceedings against TechFlow. And then you're going to resign, officially, permanently, with a public statement taking full responsibility for your role in this mess. She nodded slowly. And you? To save the Morrison project, not as Dataflow's CTO, but as an independent contractor. One project, delivered on time and on budget, and then I'm done. Will you go? I don't know yet. Maybe I'll start my own company. Maybe I'll teach. Maybe I'll just take some time to figure out who I am when I'm not trying to fix other people's problems. We sat in comfortable silence for a few minutes, watching the city lights reflect off Boston Harbor. The anger was gone, replaced by something that felt like peace. Not forgiveness. That would take longer, if it came at all. But acceptance. Greg? Claudia's voice was soft, uncertain. Yeah? I'm sorry. For all of it. I know that doesn't change anything, but I needed to say it. I know you are. And you're right. It doesn't change anything. But it's a start. Relinqui finished my wine and stood up. I should go. Long day tomorrow. Greg? I paused at the edge of the table. I still niced in. This is just... Sorry. I paused at the edge of the table. What? Thank you. For saving Dataflow. For protecting those jobs. For giving me a chance to do the right thing. Wait until you see what the newspapers write about this. I left her sitting there, looking out at the harbor, probably thinking about second chances and the price of redemption. The elevator ride down to the lobby took exactly 43 seconds, just like the one at Dataflow 3 days ago. But this time, when the doors opened, I knew exactly where I was going. The next morning's Boston Globe ran the story on the front page of the business section. Tech startup exposes corporate sabotage ring. The Wall Street Journal picked it up by noon, and by evening, it was trending on social media. Michael Chen resigned from TechFlow before the markets opened, and the FBI announced a formal investigation into technology industry espionage. Carter Bell disappeared, somewhere between Boston and New York, leaving behind a forwarded address that turned out to be a mail drop in Newark. The FBI found him 3 weeks later, working as a bartender in Miami under an assumed name. He plea bargained his way to 18 months in minimum security and a lifetime ban from the securities industry. I delivered the Morrison project 2 days ahead of schedule. The client was so impressed that they signed a 5-year extension worth $30 million. Dataflow's stock price doubled overnight, and the board voted to establish a Greg Mason Innovation Fund for emerging technology development. Claudia kept her word. She testified before a federal grand jury, cooperated fully with the FBI investigation, and resigned from Dataflow with a public statement that took complete responsibility for her actions. The divorce was finalized 6 months later, quick and clean, just like I'd requested. I never saw her again. 6 months after that, I opened Mason Technologies in a converted warehouse in Cambridge, 3 blocks from where Dataflow had started 7 years earlier. Vince joined me as lead developer, along with 12 other former Dataflow employees who decided they preferred working for someone they trusted. Our first client was Morrison Industries. Our second was Dataflow Solutions, which hired us to develop their next-generation AI platform. Some stories end with forgiveness and reconciliation. Others end with justice and new beginnings. This one ended with the understanding that sometimes the best revenge is simply building something better than what you left behind.